Hello everyone, welcome to the UKGN Network podcast for May 24, 2019. I'm Zoidberg. If you're a Nintendo Switch owner, you may, like us, have been weighing up the benefit of buying Resident Evil 4, which came out on Tuesday. Capcom's fourth entry in their long-running survival horror series is rightly heralded as one of the greatest games of all time. It revolutionised the series and pretty much inspired every third-person action game that followed for the next couple of years. It's also one that we've completed many times over, reliving our terrifying first encounter with Chainsaw Man, taking in the brilliant boss fights and enjoying the perfectly paced story. In the 14 years since Leon Kennedy first encountered Las Plagas, it's been released on every console you'd care to mention, including some that you're probably unaware of. As well as the GameCube original, we've bought it on no less than 7 systems, mainly thanks to the regular Capcom sales that crop up every few months. But this latest release is where we draw the line. Asking $29.99 for a game that's already available for half that price on PS4 or Xbox is a joke, and Capcom need to realise that every time they re-release the game on a new console, they are cheapening its legacy. We love you Resident Evil 4, but please stop. Of course, re-releasing games is an all too common occurrence these days, and let's face it, it helps many developers fund new projects, so we're not completely against the idea. We've succumbed to the lure of buying games multiple times over the years. Here are 5 games that we simply can't stop buying. Excuse us if we sound a little PC master race, but there can be no denying that the PC version of BioWare's epic Dragon Age Origins is by far the best version. So good in fact, we bought it on both Steam and Origin, and it's one of the few games that we've actually spent time playing around with mods for. That isn't to say that the console versions were bad, quite the opposite in fact, and we've managed to obtain the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions too over the years. The latter is also playable on the Xbox One through backwards compatibility, taking the number of consoles we've played it on up to 5. It's just a shame that the series has gone downhill ever since. Flashback would quite happily sit proudly near the top of UKGN's all-time greatest video games, and it all began with the Amiga version back in 1992. With its plot loosely based on Total Recall, this sci-fi adventure has graced many of our consoles over the years. Special mention should go to the 3DO version with its added cutscenes and music, as this was the version used for one of our first ever live streams. Most recently, we couldn't resist picking up the Anniversary Edition on the Nintendo Switch, complete with packaging designed to look like a SNES cartridge. Once Minecraft gets its claws into you, it doesn't let go, as we found out when we were upgrading from Xbox 360 to Xbox One and simply had to buy it again. This was at an admittedly lower price for existing owners. The PC version then followed, at the insistence of an 8-year-old son wanting to play the Pixelmon mod, with further purchases being made for the PS4 and mobile editions. It's probably best not to mention at this point how much more money we've spent on add-ons and Realm subscriptions ever since then. Bombjack first hit the arcades in 1984, but it was the excellent Spectrum version by Elite Systems that alerted us to its brilliance. Since then, we've gone on to buy it a further 5 times, including the Tecmo Arcade Collection for Xbox, all the way to the recent Arcade Archives version for PS4 and Switch. Although on that version, the bird that's supposed to follow you around the screen doesn't behave properly. Nothing beats the original though, and no visit to an arcade is complete without trying to find the cabinet and set a high score. Sometimes having rose-tinted glasses for a game can lead to a lot of heartache, and nowhere is this demonstrated more than Sega's Outrun. Our love for the brilliant arcade racing game has led to too much money being spent on countless poor home versions. These have included a Spectrum version with no sense of speed, and an Amiga version where the Ferrari had been replaced with what looked like a family saloon. Of course, versions released for the Sega consoles fared better, as did the decent PC Engine version, but it's the Switch that's home to the best version that you can play outside of an arcade, and this is the last version we'll probably ever need. Until it comes out on PS4 or Xbox, that is. What games have you bought over and over again? Let us know in the comments. Now it's time for this week's gaming news. For years, fans of Codemasters racing games have had one burning question on their lips. When are we going to get another sequel to Race Driver Grid? This week, that question was answered with the release of a new teaser trailer. Although there's very little information known at this time, there are a number of reasons why this has just shot straight to the top of our most wanted list. There's the Ego engine itself, which has provided some phenomenal visuals across the F1 and Dirt series. There's Codemasters' proven track record in the racing genre, and then there's the legacy of the Grid series itself. September the 13th is the date that you'll want to mark in your diaries, as that's when the simply titled Grid, which will hopefully not confuse people into thinking it's a remake, is set to arrive in stores. Another release date announcement this week was Supermassive Games' Man of Medan, the first game in the Until Dawn developers' new Dark Pictures anthology. We had the pleasure of playing an early preview at last year's EGX, where it managed to make us jump a few times despite playing it in a well-lit room surrounded by thousands of Expo patrons. It featured the same fantastic presentation that the developer is known for, as well as their acute understanding of what makes a good horror movie. August the 30th is the date in question, which offers a nice parallel with Until Dawn, as that was an August release as well. Published by Bandai Namco, Man of Medan will be the first game that they have made for multiple formats, being available on Xbox, PlayStation and PC, and we can't wait to play it. Now it's time to move on to the new games that we've played this week. First up, Team Sonic Racing, which is the third Sega-themed kart racer from Sumo Digital. But this time the scope has disappointingly been narrowed to just the Sonic universe. This means that over half the playable characters in the game are ones that we've never heard of, and will probably never play as. The new team dynamic, where you race in groups of 3, works quite well, but it can be very frustrating on the harder races when you cross the line in first, only to be told that you didn't win because one of your teammates finished last. Another annoyance is the upgrade system, where car parts are unlocked via a loot box system, here called mod pods, which you can purchase using in-game currency only. Why not just gift them straight to players after races, instead of forcing us to go to another menu and then spend ages opening box after box? If the team mechanic doesn't appeal, then there is an excellent Grand Prix option, which allows you to compete in a series of races as an individual, just like a standard kart racer. The bulk of the game is a story mode with some of the cringiest cutscenes ever, but fortunately every single one can be skipped so you can focus on the races. And fortunately the racing itself is just as fabulous as you'd expect. Despite its casual appearance, the Everybody's Golf series has always managed to play an accurate round of golf. The VR edition, despite a fairly steep learning curve in the early stages, manages to do exactly the same thing as long as you're playing with a Move controller. The options to play seated or with a DualShock are included, but not really recommended. It took many attempts on the driving range to perfect my swing, learning that finesse is more important than brute force. But once I did, I started to enjoy myself immensely when out on the course. Additional courses, caddies, ball and club types are all unlocked simply by playing the game, and you'll get something new at the end of virtually every round, at least to begin with. The presentation is bright and colourful throughout, but the voice work and lip sync will have you hitting the skip button every time. One disappointing aspect, but also perfectly understandable, is the lack of any local or online multiplayer. Despite this, Everybody's Golf VR is another great addition to the PlayStation VR library, and well worth the asking price. We've seen games where characters are trapped and alone aboard a troubled space station before, but never one told from the perspective of the AI. Observation comes from the same developers as Stories Untold, and like that game, it's a tale told primarily through computer screens and systems. You'll get to take control of the various cameras around the station and watch the brilliantly voiced lone human survivor as she tries to piece together what's happened to the ship. Puzzles will crop up for you to solve in order to progress the story, and they never get in the way of the atmosphere that the designers have created. This is a game quite unlike anything we've ever played, and you should definitely check it out. There are times when Technosphere Reloaded, released on Steam this week, looks like a technical showcase for the Unreal Engine. It features so many fancy lighting effects, rippling water and particle showers that it can occasionally obscure your view of what is actually a fun little arcade game. Rolling and bouncing a ball around and over obstacles is nothing new. It served as the basis for a particularly memorable minigame in Trials HD, for instance, but it's just as enjoyable here as it ever has been, thanks to well-designed levels and excellent physics. There's an unnecessary story that tries to give context to what you're doing, but it ultimately boils down to getting to the end as quick as you can and don't fall off. If nothing else, Bubsy Paws on Fire should be the proof that the Bubsy the Bobcat revival just isn't going to happen. Accolade's platform mascot has never been a top tier character anyway, but this attempt to bring him back in an endless runner is one of the most annoying games you can play right now. In fairness to developer Choice Provisions, who made the excellent Runner series, the actual gameplay isn't that bad. It's just that everything around it, from the cutscenes to the voiceover and the music, make you want to put your fist through the screen. The final insult is the fact that simply completing a level isn't enough for you to advance, and you're forced to play through them again with other characters before you can move on. Before we bring this week's show to an end, we just have time to name our retro game of the week, and with Konami celebrating their 50th anniversary this year, we thought it was a good time to select a timeless classic from their back catalogue. Track and Field is one of the few retro games that requires genuine skill from the player, rather than just memorising a pattern. The designers at Konami got everything right at the first attempt, so much so that every multisports game that followed used it as a template. Hitting 45 degrees as the perfect angle to jump or throw became an industry standard. The entire C64 back catalogue of epics would not exist if it were not for this game. Whenever we feel the competitive urge, this is one of our go-to games, and will be for years to come. Things can get quite intense at times, but as you bask in the glow of victory, there's no feeling quite like it. With that, it's time to end. Do you have any memories of playing Track and Field? Please let us know what they are and whether you agree with our assessment. We post a new podcast every Friday at 7 PM. Give us a like and subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next one. Also, join in with our gaming chat over on Twitter and Facebook at UK Gaming Network. I'm Zoidberg, and thank you for listening. See you next time.